And you look through the jobs program or the jobs bills, and it's like, well, I guess this is a government of the government, by the government, for the government. Because there's nothing in there to entice manufacturers, to entice like a Samsung, or to entice your customers if you're selling to OEMs, to put a factory in the United States. If you're going to serve this market, put a factory in the United States. What do we have to do to get you to put a factory in the United States? The Bureau of Labor Statistics, I've heard this number for years. There's been a reduction of 42,000 factories in the United States in the last 10 years. So I've heard that. Or people say a higher number. But so I went and searched out, and I find there's a database. I just found it like 2 weeks ago. And there's a database that describes the number of factories in the country and how many people they employ. And 10 years ago, there were about 14 or 1,500 factories in the country. Only 14 or 1,500 that employed more than 1,000 people. We've lost about, we have less than 1,000 of those. So in our country, we have less than 1,000 factories that employ more than 1,000 people. And we've lost a third of that, 39% we've lost. This is a big country. This is 300 million people. We all buy shoes. Buying shoes, I talk to people in these economists, they go, oh, no, that's low tech. You've been in a Pampers factory? You've been in a factory that mass produces something? That is not low tech. To make 1 million shoes, imagine if you had an operation that made 1 million shoes. And I'm telling you, I have 2 daughters and a wife, we buy more than 1 pair of shoes. And I don't blame them, they have to, they're all, professional women need to be buying shoes. And I have a shoe story I can tell them. Nevertheless, if we had an enterprise in this country that made 300 million shoes, how many people would that employ? That's just shoes. Now, we're all walking around in clothing here. And, I'm sorry, what's your name? Joe Planey was telling me here at breakfast. He went through, he does what I do. I get to New York, and my wife and daughters are in the Urban Outfitters, and I'm going, where's everything made? So I start going through the racks, and I look at the labels, and that's what I'm doing in there. And I found in the Urban Outfitters in New York City that I found something made in America. T-shirts. That's it. But, you went through your closet. 50 shirts. 50 shirts. I have 50 shirts in my closet. They're getting old and crappy, but I have 50 shirts in my closet. You looked at all the labels. 1 was made in the United States. Is that right? 1. Okay, so we're walking around at any one time, $200 worth of clothes on us, $300 worth. 300 million Americans walking around. We don't need a clothes industry. Let the Chinese do that. Now, this would be okay, maybe. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of jobs for people making clothes, nevertheless. I'm going to regress here a little bit because Obama talked about the Jobs for Main Street Act. Last night he said, Senate, you got to pass a bill. The House has done it December 16th. That was after New Jersey and Virginia flipped and went with Republicans. I live in Virginia, and I heard the Democrats saying, oh, it was just a bad candidate. And I said, my bad candidate, my ass. So now we have, what happened in Massachusetts, and they're feeling like, so they passed the Jobs for Main Street Act. Have anybody gone online and looked at the Jobs for Main? You guys are Main Street. This is Main Street right here. Any of you looked at the Jobs for Main Street Act? 41, it's 154 billion. This is going to stimulate, this is going to give jobs for Main Street. This is what the president was talking about. We're going to get jobs. $41 billion for unemployment insurance. $27 billion for Federal Highway Administration. $23 billion as a federal match for payments to doctors. I don't know what that is. $23 billion for teachers. $12 billion for COBRA. $6 billion for Federal Transit Administration, $2.3 billion for Child Tax Credit, $2 billion for the DOE Innovation Technology Loan Guarantee Program, That's the only jobs I see right there, the 154 billion. Maybe some in Federal Highway Administration. 1.2 billion for law enforcement. 1 billion for the Housing and Urban Development's Indian Housing Program. And 75 million goes to the Forest Service's Hazardous Fuels Reduction Program. So, so this is the way they solve our problem. The White House thinks, okay, we've got a year, we got the stimulus bill, that problem solved. That's kind of the way Washington works. Boom, we throw money at it, that problem solved, okay, now let's do health care, cap and trade. The problem wasn't solved. So now they're going, ooh, that stimulus bill didn't really quite work, did it? And you know what? Manufacturers think it backfired, because now manufacturers are going to have to pay the bill. Who's going to pay that bill for all these schlock programs? Who's going to pay that bill? It's going to fall right on your shoulders. And now I get people like Doug Bartlett, who is in the printed circuit board industry. His company is outside Chicago. That's where the printed circuit board industry, the global circuit board industry, started in Chicago. He was the oldest circuit board manufacturer in the nation. He said, I was waiting for Obama to come out and say, we got to take on all these unfair trade practices. We got to start providing incentives for our manufacturing. We got to try to attract industry to this country, try to stop the outflow, the hemorrhage. And I didn't hear any of that. And he said, I closed my business. Because he said, I don't want to be the sacrificial lamb. So this is what I hear. This is a journalist, this is what I hear. It didn't used to be like this, by the way. Because in the 1990s, as a journalist covering manufacturing, it was exciting, and it was growth, and it was incredible. And I'll just give you a sense of what I covered in the 90s, because you might think, like, this guy is like, Mr. Gloom and Doom. But in the 1990s, I covered the Toyota production system was just being promoted as an idea. James Womack, Bruce, and Jones wrote the book, The Machine That Changed the World. They coined the term lean and just-in-time manufacturing and low inventories and inventory turns. That was revolutionary. Covered that. Covered agility. It created the AMRIs, the Agility Manufacturing Research Institutes in the country. They had the Agility Forum. I covered the theory of constraints by Eli Goldratt, which was really revolutionary. I covered the ideas that were promulgated by Edward Deming's statistical process control, basic underpinnings for TQM. I covered TQM, re-engineering. I covered the Baldrige Award criteria. The Baldrige Award was a huge deal back then. It was huge. It was incredible. It was a great story. That tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of companies were downloading the Baldrige Award criteria and applying these best practices. I covered best practices. I covered ISO 9000 was a big deal. As International Standards Organization. It was a big deal. ISO 4, these are the stories I covered. I didn't cover any of what I'm covering now. I didn't have to. Then Six Sigma from Motorola, 9.999999 quality. That was a big deal. It was all for all. You guys know these. This was what you were doing. This is what I was covering. This is what we were concentrating. ISO 14000, a Shingle Prize for manufacturing excellence.